Hey, lovely, let's talk about this. Because I think this is something happening quietly for a lot of foster carers, but not many people are actually saying it out loud. Why do so many foster carers downplay themselves? Why do we minimize what we carry or what we do or even what we've learned and the impact that we actually have? Why do so many carers say things like, I'm just a foster carer, anyone could do this, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm probably overreacting. I don't want to sound arrogant, and maybe you said some of those things yourself. Because fostering has a way of slowly disconnecting people from their confidence, not always loudly, but quietly and over time, through pressure, through criticism, through constantly second guessing yourself, through systems that often make carers feel like everyone else knows better than they do. And by the end of this episode, I don't necessarily want you to leave feeling more confident, but I do want you to leave recognizing that maybe you've been carrying more wisdom, discernment, and strength than you've actually allowed yourself to acknowledge. Because today's conversation, it isn't about ego and it isn't about becoming prideful, but it is about understanding the difference between humility and disappearing. So let's start here. Why do foster carers downplay themselves in the first place? And honestly, I think a part of this is because fostering places you in an environment where you are constantly being assessed. You're being assessed in meetings, reviews, reports, by other professionals, and even by the decisions. And after a while, you can start to feel like your role is to actually just accommodate everybody else's expertise, whilst actually ignoring your own. But here's what's actually really important to remember, that you're not just emotionally attached to these children. You are the one living this. Day after day, night after night, you see what the professionals don't see. You are the one who notices the patterns, the behavior changes, the triggers, the fears, the irregulation, and even the atmosphere in the home. You carry knowledge that only comes through proximity. And yet, many carers still talk about themselves like they bring nothing of value to the table. And I think this is one of the reasons why this actually happens, is because many carers have become more comfortable questioning themselves than actually trusting themselves. And please hear me properly when I say this. Trusting yourself does not mean becoming unteachable. It doesn't mean thinking that you know everything. It doesn't mean rejecting support or even professional guidance. But there is a difference between staying teachable and constantly assuming that everybody else's voice matters more than yours. And some carers have lived there for so long that they no longer recognize how much they've even shrunk themselves. Because when you spend years trying to navigate pressure, trying to avoid complaints, trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep placements stable, you can slowly start making yourself smaller without even noticing. You become smaller in meetings, you become smaller in conversation, even smaller in your opinions, smaller in your leadership, and eventually you stop seeing your value altogether. But I also think that there's another layer to this conversation, and it's one that goes deeper spiritually. Because many carers can often confuse humility with self-assurance. They think downplaying themselves actually makes them humble. They think dismissing compliments makes them more humble. They think constantly minimizing their impact makes them humble. But humility was never supposed to mean pretending God gave you nothing. In Romans 12:6, it says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. That means that gifts do exist. Wisdom, discernment, leadership, compassion, it all exists. And acknowledging what God has built within you is not the same as worshipping yourself. And some of you listening to this, you may have held homes together through absolute chaos. You have regulated children through trauma. You may have sat in hospital rooms, school meetings, CAMS appointments. You've advocated, you've protected, you've been there through court. You have absorbed pressure that people around you will never see, and yet you still describe yourself as just a foster carer. But there is nothing just about what you do, and I think sometimes the fostering world becomes so focused on what carers still need to improve that carers just stop recognizing how far they've already grown. Because yes, there is always going to be more to learn, but growth and wisdom can coexist at the same time. You do not have to constantly diminish yourself to remain grounded. And honestly, I think some carers are more afraid of being seen as arrogant than they are about being concerned about disappearing completely. They stay quiet, they hold back, they second guess, they apologise for themselves constantly because shrinking, it becomes safer. But playing small doesn't actually protect you. It just connects you from your own voice. And over time, that becomes exhausting. Because sustainable fostering requires more than just simply compassion, it also requires confidence. Not loud, bold confidence, not performative, but grounded confidence. But the kind that says, I don't know everything, but I do know what I've seen. I do know what this child needs, and I do know what's happening inside of my home. And there's a real important difference between arrogance and ownership. Arrogance says, I'm above everyone else. But ownership, that says, I recognize what God has entrusted to me. And I think many foster carers need permission to just step back into ownership again. So if you've been listening to this today and you've realized how often you minimize yourself, how often you dismiss your own growth, how often you have downplayed the weight of what you carry, I just want you to sit with this for a moment. What if you've become so used to surviving in fostering that you no longer recognize the strength that God has built within you through it? Not perfection, not superiority, not strength, but wisdom, discernment, resilience. And maybe this is the season where you stop speaking about yourself as though you bring nothing of value to the table, because you really do. And the children in your care, the homes that you lead, and the people around you, they all need the healthiest version of you, not the smallest. And if this conversation has resonated with you today, I'd really encourage you to stay within this series, because in the next episode, we're going to go deeper into the difference between true humility and false humility in fostering. Because there is a difference between being grounded and constantly disappearing. But for now, just sit with this. You don't have to shrink yourself to stay humble. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with a fellow foster carer today. And if you're not ready to say goodbye yet, don't worry, we can hang out some more, and I'll see you in the next episode.